Today, I'm gonna read you a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was called Little Red Riding Hood because she was quite small. Because she was quite small, and because she was always wore a red cloak with a big red hood to it, which her grandmother had made for her. Now one day her mother, who had been churning and baking cakes, said to her, "My dear, put your red cloak with the hood to it, and take this cake and this pot of butter to your granny, and ask how she is, for I hear she is ailing." Now Little Red Riding Hood was very fond to her grandmother, who made her so many nice things, so she put on her cloak joyfully and started on her errand. But her grandmother lived some way off, and to reach the cottage, Little Red Riding Hood had to pass through a vast lonely forest. However, some woodcutters were at work in it, so Little Red Riding Hood was not so very much alarmed when she saw a great big wolf coming towards her, because she knew that wolves are cowardly things, and sure enough the woodcutters, he would surely have eaten Little Red Riding Hood, only stopped and asked her politely where she was going. "I'm going to see Granny. Take her this cake and this pot of butter and ask how she is," says Little Red Riding Hood. "Does she live a very long way off?" asks the wolf craftily. "Not so very far, if you go by the straight road," replied Little Red Riding Hood. "You only have to pass the mill, and the first cottage on the right is Granny's. But I'm going to buy a wood path, because there are such a lot of nuts and flowers and butterflies." "I wish you good luck," says the wolf politely. "Give my respect to your grandmother and tell her I hope she is quite well." And with that he trod off, but instead of going his ways, he turned back, took the straight road to the old woman's cottage and knocked at the door. "Rap, rap, rap." "Who's there?" asked the old woman, who was in bed. "Little Red Riding Hood," sings out the wolf, making his voice as shrill as he could. "I've come to bring dear Granny a pot of butter and a cake from Mother, and to ask how you are. Pull the bobbin and the red will go up," says the old woman, well satisfied. So the wolf pulled the bobbin and red went up, and oh my! It wasn't a minute before he had gobbled up old Granny, for he had nothing to eat for a week. Then he shut the door, put on Granny's nightcap, and getting into bed, rolled himself well up in the clothes. By and by along comes Little Red Riding Hood, who had been amusing herself by gathering nuts, running after butterflies, and picking flowers. So she knocked at the door. "Rap, rap, rap." "Who's there?" says the wolf, making his voice as soft as he could. Now Little Red Riding Hood heard the voice was very gruff, but she thought her grandmother had a cold, so she said, "Little Red Riding Hood, with a pot of butter and a cake from Mother, to ask how you are. Pull the bobbin and the red will go up." So Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin, the red went up, and there she thought was her grandmother in the bed, for the cottage was so dark one could not see well. Besides, the crafty wolf turned his face to the wall at first, and he made his voice as soft as he could when he said, "Come and kiss me, my dear." Then Little Red Riding Hood took off her cloak and went to the bed. "Oh, grandmama, grandmama," you, my dear.